We've shortened it to the Victorian Brain, but now we refer to the show as Victorian Brain Architecture. So it, with all of its supporting artwork, is Victorian Brain Architecture, and we simply call it anymore amongst ourselves, we call it the Brain. My dream's always been to share artwork, and Jeff started talking about this idea he'd been formulating, and definitely talked to the wrong person, because as soon as somebody mentions building stuff, my brain explodes into 1,000 ideas, and all I said was, let's build it.
I was keeping notes on it as an idea for about 17 years. And when I was working in smaller rural communities to do community mural projects, people were sharing so many stories with me. And that was one of those experiences where I started seeing lots of overlap between people. One person's talking about restoring a car, somebody else is talking about a quilt, which on the surface seems like totally different stuff. But underneath it all, people kept going back to thoughts of home and thoughts that kind of lit their passion on fire. And I found myself jotting lots of notes down on those stories. Not the specifics, but the patterns that I saw in the stories. And I kept thinking, God, I'd like to build something to contain all of this. Something that reflected the patterns somehow. I gotta build this thing. If I don't build this thing, now that I have this place to work, I remember saying to my mother-in-law, I'm a coward, and I should be ashamed of myself. And so I called Todd. I built the bookshelf, and I didn't even know why I was calling Todd. I built the bookshelf, and then I said, well, now what do I do?
It's the exact same thing that I love. I love to reuse old stuff. I love to honor something that someone had done before and bring it back to life. So quite simply, we went out to the garage without a plan, and we started figuring out, how can we put these two shelves together? We can't do it straight, we won't have any stability. Let's do an L. Then we decided, okay, we grew up in Marietta, seeing the same things, exploring the same alleyways, and crawling around in the tunnels beneath Marietta. That's kind of how we formulated, okay, well, on one side of the brain, let's make it look like this, and on the other side, let's make it look like this. And
one is like the architectural skin of our environment. The other part is like the inside workings that, for the most part, people are less interested in seeing, but do fascinate us and does capture the imagination of people when presented in the right light.
We both grew up in a very mechanically minded industrial setting. Jeff's dad and his granddad were electricians.
Great-granddad.
And his great-granddad. And my grandpa was always building things, remodeling things, fixing up trucks. I had a dad that worked in a plant here in Marietta. I went to school to be a machinist, working around machinery and making things out of metal. So when we built the screen, the main part of the installation piece was very building-like and mechanical.
Very
but
solid,
we also
very
went
blocky.
Out in the woods, in the neighborhood. We grew up 2 blocks from each other. And there's this patch of woods between our houses. And we would go exploring those woods. So the screen is our way out of the mechanical world. So it became a little more organic minded, and it combines a very industrial mechanical looking column and top with a very organic looking sculpted plywood.
But membranes and edges and boundaries, I think, are a constant element that we're exploring. But we're very much exploring them in these different ways. What is permeable? What is solid? What is an obstruction? What allows the definition of a solid relationship of this to that? What allows for flow back and forth in an effective way? I think of the sound with a brain
Why?
I see. Say that.
as
If you're not outraged, you aren't
the
paying
different conversations that we have internally.
Something I'd like
They
to
did
try.
I
what?
think of them almost as voices in our heads.
Say that again.
It's an internal dialogue
And
that is honoring what others bring to us.
right.
Sí, pero ya se me acabó. Ya me voy.
But it added so much depth to the brain that I was amazed. It was, the brain became a whole new piece with the addition of that sound.
Rich.
Very rich. And I remember
Experience.
the first time when I went up to the dairy barn and just stood in the middle and then walked into the different zones and just listened.
You kind of hear
To
one
each of
set
the
of
sounds.
sounds fading out
And-
and another one emerge.
When all the people in the world love, then the
And-
strong will not overpower the weak.
What was so great about it was the culmination of a really good back and forth exchange. Sharing ideas, editing out and narrowing down the focus, and then having something tangible that you could sit and enjoy.
Nature's party to all our deals
So the
is-
process to me
has
was
more votes,
was as
longer,
rewarding as the end
and a
result.
sterner sense of justice than we do. Wendell Berry.
But then standing there beside of something we created with the addition of the sound,
Challenges are what make life interesting. Overcoming them is what makes life meaningful.
it just made the installation become a whole different piece than it was before the sound.
And I think in that way, the product becomes expressive of the methodology, of the process that makes it. So just one is an inherent part of the other. To me, that feels like what a healthy human being should be like. The way they operate becomes an expression. You know, their actions are very integrated with their beliefs, and I see that in what this collection of, you know, maybe 15 people now have been able to do to make a cohesive, integrated, synthesized whole out of places that start out as something different.
Right.